people, their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more complaining. People, their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more.
All right, we're continuing to talk about what I'm the world expert in, and that is complaining. Why we do it, what's wrong with it, and how to get ourselves and others to stop. Now, as I've shared with you repeatedly, I'm the world expert because I'm a learned expert. I have studied, and I've also talked to a lot of people and had a lot of experience. And the person who really figured out that people complain for only 5 reasons is Dr. Robin Kowalski, excuse me, at Clemson University. And she found out that people complain for 5 reasons. And I could not keep those reasons in my mind because they were a little bit of complex psychology. In other words, happiness is often referred to as subjective contentment. I needed some things that sounded a little more evident for me. So I came up with this acronym, GRIPE, G-R-I-P-E. And we've already talked about the G in GRIPE, which stands for get attention. The R in GRIPE stands for remove responsibility. And we're up to the I in GRIPE, which is inspire envy. The way Robin put it, I think actually worked better, but I needed an I once I dedicated myself to this to this device of remembering this. And so she said brag, flat out. People complain to brag. So what I did was I looked for another way to say brag, and I came up with inspire envy. People complain to brag. They simply, one of the greatest gifts I've enjoyed as a result of this complaint-free process is the opportunity to travel around the world and experience different cultures, and also other trips I've taken, like to Africa and things like that, to Tanzania. And I've discovered there's a universal around the world, and that is that it is considered rude to brag about your good fortune. It is considered rude to brag about your good fortune. Well, of course, because it makes other people feel less significant. However, remember the first reason people like to complain? Get attention. When somebody has something that they really, really are proud of and they want you to envy, if you find out that somebody comes up and says, wow, that's a beautiful car as you're getting out, let's don't call it envy, but let's call it admiration or appreciation. You feel good. You simply feel good. And a lot of people seek to actively cultivate this envy by bragging about their good fortune. I think that one time, and I don't know why, I said bragging, complaining. Of course, I mean complaining about their good fortune, because it gets the same message across. One time I was in a hotel room and I turned on the TV and it was on Desperate Housewives. And I watched I've never seen the show, last 15 minutes of this thing. I had it on while I was unpacking. And I was like, these women do nothing but complain to brag about their good fortune. You know, oh, the Mercedes needs this, or you just simply cannot get a good sushi chef that'll come to your house anymore. Used to be you could. Just I'm trying to think of the word. My friend Brian calls them third world problems, but the conjured up things that are ways of actually letting people know. There's a story that I tell when I speak, and it's a story of a friend of mine who bought a $250,000 boat. And when he bought the boat, he was so excited. And he knew at that time that I could not afford a $250,000 boat, but he so wanted to tell me. And we got together for coffee, as we often do. And I asked him what was going on. He said, I bought a boat. And I said, oh man, that's great. And he started telling me about it, but it was, very in subdued ways. And then a few minutes later, he goes, but it came with the trailer, which is great. But you think when you spend $250,000 on a trailer, on a boat rather, the trailer would be nicer. So what he had just done is he had bragged to me about the fact that he is able to spend $250,000 on the boat, but he did it by complaining about it. It's so interesting. I read this study that found that because of this reason, people complaining to inspire envy, one of the main reasons people complain is to draw what's called an invidious comparison to someone else. In other words, if I'm Will and I complain about Joe over there and complain about he's always, I'll say something because this is the opposite of my good friend Joe. Joe is always late. He's always late, right? I'm telling people, don't expect Joe to be on time. If you want to meet Joe, you better plan on him being late, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The interesting thing is when people take in that information, they ascribe that quality to the person saying it. Isn't that an interesting phenomenon? In other words, they're going to think I'm the one who's always late, which, by the way, tends to be true. That's one of the reasons I think Joe and I are such good friends. He has to set an alarm so he doesn't leave too early to come meet me. And I have to set an alarm to make sure I leave early enough to go meet him. We try to draw an invidious comparison. We try to make ourselves look superior by pointing out someone else's inferiorities. And yet the study has found that what happens is the people hearing the complaint ascribe that to you. Take that in. Another thing I find really interesting about this idea of complaining to inspire envy is that it builds that tribal mentality. Of course, the media is built around complaining. CNN complains about Trump. Fox and whatever complains about Biden. It's all about complaining, which we'll talk about tomorrow, to inspire envy, but it's also, power rather. But it's done to build your tribe, and you need to envy us. Why? Because we're the smart ones. We're the ones in the know. The people all the way on the other side, and by this way, it has to be that way because distance allows us to dehumanize people. The people all the way on the other side, they're the ones we don't want to be like. These are the ones we want to be like, whatever side you're on. I'll share with you a story which always gets a laugh when I speak. You don't complain about people who are like you. You complain about people who are not like you in an attempt to make yourself look better. And if you don't believe me, try it when you're driving. If you tend to drive, slow and cautious, then people who tend to drive fast and aggressive can have you shouting at the windshield. I used to drive a lot more fast and aggressive than I do now, but it doesn't bother me when others do. But I used to drive that way. And back then I had an assistant who drove me to the airport, and she was the opposite. She was slow and careful. She's one of these that will, put her blinker on, pulling out of her own driveway, just very, very safe. And which was fine. And because I tend to be late a lot of times, she would be driving me to the airport. And I would be thinking, would you please speed up? Gum wrappers are passing us. See, I drive just slow enough not to get a speeding ticket. Okay. In my opinion, she drove just fast enough not to get a parking ticket. We complain about people who are not like us as a way in our own minds. And remember, everything we do is ultimately for our own status in our own mind, period. Our own status. The approval of others builds the status in our own minds. People complain to inspire envy. It's a common thing. And we do it to try and make ourselves appear superior, and it totally backfires by making us look inferior. So what do you do if you've got somebody who is complaining to inspire envy? The way this will often happen is one person will complain about the other person, complain about somebody else. The example I like to use is you're getting ready to start a meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you've got 30 people there, and they're all around a big table, etc. And Joe looks around. We'll make Joe the bad guy again. Joe looks around and says, well, we could start this meeting, but Tom is late as usual. And everybody kind of snickers. Did you need Joe to tell you that Tom was not there or late? No, of course not. Joe wasn't trying to tell you Tom was late. Joe was trying to tell you he was on time. He wants you to notice he is there. So I call this compliment the opposite. When they make an invidious comparison about somebody else, you compliment them for not having that trait. You know what I love about you, Joe? You're always on time. And he'll never do it again. You've complimented him. You've given him what it is that he needs, which ultimately we all do. Improved social status and status in our own heads. How's that for a lot of honesty? All right, since I said, how's that for a lot of honesty, this is your opportunity to click share and expand our community. If you haven't taken the complaint-free challenge, please do so and get your friends and family to do as well. We are going to create a complaint-free world. How? By getting 1% of the world's population to take this challenge by the year 2030. We're at 14 million people. We want to hit over 70 million. It's going to take passionate people helping us share it. So please do let other people know. And right now you can get a complaint-free bracelet, 9 videos, as well as an ebook, all for free. You just pay $1 for shipping and handling. Let's get everybody else to check in here and see who is sharing. And when you click share, be sure and let us know that you shared. That's the way we know. Also, I want to let you know, if you're here for the first time, gotta let us know. All right. So I see that Mary is here, and so is Trish. Hey, Trish, good to see you. Anna Barbosa Sharp says, first time coming across you live. Need to hear this as I'm getting ready to head to work. Great. Glad to know I could be of service. David says, you don't need to complain to brag. If anyone is interested in what you have to say, you can listen first and try to focus on what makes other people interesting. You turn it around at the bend. Very good. Good advice. Jennifer says, good morning, y'all. I am grateful for a new volunteer opportunity today. Jennifer, I am grateful that you are doing that. I think I told you that the brilliant writer, David Sudeikis, David, I get Jason Sudeikis and David Sedaris. There we go. It's David Sedaris. He does what Hemingway used to do. He gets up every morning and writes from 6 until noon. But unlike Hemingway, who used to go fishing and drink, he walks around the streets of London with a trash bag and picks up trash. This famous author. Why? Because he feels like, and he does it every day. We feel so good when we give. Linda says, shared and grateful to have my sister, Mary Perry, watching also. Susan Panther, I'm going to sing Mary, Mary by the Monkees all day today. Susan Panther. Oh, hey, why purple? Why are the bracelets purple? Very good question. Hey, Mark, good to see you. Mark is a longtime friend and also spreads the complaint-free message. Why purple? It was a fluke thing. I actually came up with the idea of the bracelets and everything, called the church secretary and said that I wanted to get some bracelets for the weekend to hand out. And I said, like the Live Strong bracelets, I don't want anything necessarily on them. And she said, okay, what color do you want? And I said, I don't know. What color do you think? And she said, well, purple is the color of spirituality, which I now think is funny telling the story because here I am, 10 years of studying the Bible and everything and thought I was a pretty smart guy. And she's the one who tells me that purple is the color of spirituality. So I said, okay, go with it. And she called a local toy supplier and they had what were called Team Spirit bracelets, and they looked just like this, but they said spirit on them. And that, by the way, is why we kept the word spirit on the bracelets for many years, even after we added a complaint-free world.org. One of the things that I'm always working with is my publishers around the world to make sure they use the same bracelet. I always remind them, there's a complaint-free world. There's not a complaint-free Czech Republic. There is not a complaint-free Taiwan. There is not a complaint-free Mexico. We're all together in this. So let's all make the bracelets look good. And the same. Great message, says Mark. David says purple is the highest vibration in the spectrum. That is true. Ultraviolet. Karen says, grateful for another beautiful day. P.S. Purple is my favorite color. I love purple. I think it's a great color. Thanks, everybody, for being with me. Look forward. Oh, one more. Love it. My mom always said purple was a royal color. I've heard that as well. I'll tell you a quick story about the purple bracelets. When we first got to 1 million, I think, 1,000,001, something like that, sending out bracelets. We're at 14, over 14 now. And when we got to 1 million, I got contacted by a hospital somewhere in Maine or something like that. It was in New England, and I was in Kansas City. And the person could not have been nicer and so appreciative and supportive. And then she said, we need to ask you, please, to change the color of your bracelet. And I said, why is that? And she said, we use a purple bracelet as a DNR indicator when someone is ill. DNR means do not resuscitate. If they die, don't try and save them. And I said, what's the problem? And she said, we actually had somebody wearing one of your bracelets come in, and we didn't take it off, thought it was one of ours, etc. And I thanked her very much and said I could understand completely how that must make her feel. And it occurred to me that there's a lot of other purple bracelets out there. And I suggested maybe she change the color of hers, because at that point, we had 2 million bracelets that we had purchased down in the basement. And the thought of changing colors, not something I wanted to consider. Susan Panther's the first one to click share, rather. Thank you so much for that. Hey, Tamara? So where does chronic illness fall in the complaint-free world when someone asks how I am? You can state facts without embellishing. If you are, my back, I have back issues. So my back can give me a challenge periodically. And I can say, can't lift this well today. My back's giving me a challenge. Although lately it's been doing really great. And that's not complaining. Going around and using that as an excuse to start a conversation, or embellishing it and saying, how dare this happen to me? We talked about this earlier. I think you'll find some perspective if you go back a few. Good. Yeah, if you go back a few, you'll find I talked about how it has to do with your energy behind it. There's stating facts, and then there's complaining. Thanks, everybody, for being with me. Enjoy today, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
No more complaining people. Their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free world. No more complaining people. Their lives are changing. We're flying high, creating a complaint-free